So first, we are going to start with awareness. And when you consider the phrase awareness of self, you may initially think about things like maybe your personality, the type of work you do, how good of a friend or partner you are, or even just your likes and your dislikes. And it's important to be aware of these things and many other identities that you hold. But awareness of the self means really taking a look inside at how you think, how you feel, and how you act. And if you take a look at the screen, we have an image of someone kind of spinning a lot of plates in the air right now. And I want to know how many of you are feeling like this right now? Feeling like you're juggling all these spinning plates in the air, trying to keep them from just crashing down. I know I am. And the reality is that we are all juggling and sometimes just flat out struggling to keep those in the plate, right? To meet internal and external expectations. I'm constantly feeling like, sometimes I can never do enough or be enough. And that is really it's taking all my energy and all my capacity to keep those plates from crashing to the ground. So I want everyone to take about 20 seconds to reflect about your own life. And what plates are you spinning right now? And if you feel comfortable to do so, feel free to list a few of them in the chat. It could be both personal or professional. And, when we're thinking about the plates and like our to-do list and everything, we're just naming it to tame it. Simply listing it out without judgment, more like an acknowledgement of, hey, I'm doing a lot. Here are the plates that I'm juggling. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and just list some of those plates in the chat. And I know for me, I feel like there's an additional few plates right now since the end of the year is coming up, right? You're trying to finish up projects before the break. You're maybe coordinating visits to visit your family over the holidays. So it can be a lot. I'm seeing in the chat, not fun house repair projects, right? Absolutely, especially as we're going into winter and you're like, oh, my roof leaks now. That's wonderful. Absolutely. So we're, juggling a new job and wanting to having those internal and external expectations of yourself, trying to juggle those. Relearning, relearning raising young children at an older age. Oh, that can be really challenging. Absolutely. Deadlines, grief, and then funding sources. Absolutely. Taking care of aging parents and relatives, right? So looking through some of these responses in the chat and just taking a beat and acknowledging that one of the greatest things that we can do for someone else is to respond with empathy, knowing that everyone has their own plates that they're trying to juggle right now and just keep them from crashing to the ground. So thank you all for putting that into the chat and feeling comfortable enough to do so. So I love this quote from Brene Brown, and she talks about how we need to honor our own struggles and the struggles of others by responding with empathy. And that healing impacts all of us when we do this. And often when we get stressed, particularly if you are in a leadership position or leadership role, we often try and tamper down those feelings that may be cropping up. We feel like maybe you're just too busy to feel emotions and you kind of push them aside, you pack them away for later. But research shows that when we do that, we actually create more problems because eventually those feelings come out. And maybe they come out in an emotional reaction that feels a little bit larger than expected. And maybe they manifest physically, like in a stomach ache or a headache. But no matter what, they always do find a way to come out, and sometimes in the most expected ways. And a healthier generation, we like to think of emotions kind of as party people. They like to be out and they like to be really loud about it. So our question is, this is a natural emotional response. What do we do about this? What do we do when kind of that stress creeps in? How can we manage that? So we take this idea that these three things, your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors, are all interconnected. They're inextricably linked to each other. And when we are stressed, we feel a disruption in one of those areas. And since they are all interconnected, disrupting one might disrupt more than just one, and sometimes all of them. We know that stress manifests differently for all of us. It's going to show up in different ways depending on how you individually perceive and process stress. So when our brain is put into high alert, it naturally begins to move into this state of kind of self-protection in a way. And although the stress might manifest differently for everyone, on an individual level, the way stress shows up for you is usually going to be pretty consistent. So people who are prone to get headaches will get a headache. Avoiders will tend to just avoid, maybe procrastinate a little bit too much. And kind of those fighters tend to lean in and get really aggravated. And so for the purposes of our next exercise, we're going to break the stress down and the stress response down into what we like to call the 3 Bs. So the first B is beliefs. So what are you thinking? And not enough, what are you thinking type of way, but what are you really thinking? Or what story are you telling yourself about the situation that's happening? The second B is body. So checking in with your body and just noticing how it is feeling, if there's anything off with it at that certain point in time. And the third B is behavior. So what are you doing or not doing, right? Sometimes you're like me and a procrastinator. And the key is to realize that all of these, like I said, are linked. So whether you first notice stress through your beliefs, your body, or your behavior, check in with each one of them so you understand how you may be responding to stress. So let's take some time to reflect. How does stress show up for you? And if you feel comfortable, go ahead and put that in the chat. Are you a beliefs, body, or behavior person when stress shows up? Or maybe a combination of a few. I'm seeing stiff neck. Yep, absolutely. So body. For me, it shows up in my body too, where I have a really disrupted sleeping pattern. So I'm like awake from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Stress eater, right? So kind of those behavioral mechanisms we've adapted to, fatigue, bodies, shoulders, body and sickness, shoulder tension, avoiding certain people, right? When you're like, I don't want to deal with this person right now, you tend to avoid. And the idea of failing others, right? Having that thought process. So I'm seeing some folks have a combination of a few, right? And I am definitely a combination of a few as well. So you are not alone in that. So, now we're going to talk about, now that we've identified how stress manifests in our beliefs, our body, and our behavior, what can we do about that, right? How can we show up with a strategy to kind of combat it when we know it's going to show up? So how can we kind of get around that? So let's start looking at management strategies that might be a good fit for you. The first one, we're going to talk about our beliefs. So if you notice that stress is showing up in your beliefs, a reframe is one of our favorite coping strategies. And, simply put, a reframe is a strategy where you change the way you view a particular situation. You end up framing it up in a more positive light by finding an alternative meaning. And you can usually tell that you're in need of a reframe when you start using that black and white language or that catastrophic language, such as I'm terrible, I'm the worst, I'm really bad at this. I saw one in the chat where you feel like I'm failing others, right? Really catastrophic language. So for example, for me, if I'm thinking, wow, I am really terrible at engaging my staff, I might be in need of a reframe to get me out of that catastrophic language that I'm in. So instead, a reframe might look like, I'm working hard on figuring out new strategies to engage my staff, right? Understanding that I am learning as a person, and that is what I can be doing to help. The next one is if you notice that stress is showing up in your body. we recommend to get moving. And this does not have to be a full on exercise, although research does say that it helps. But I very much understand that you might not have time in between back to back meetings to do a 30-minute workout, right? So it can be as simple as tightening and relaxing your muscles briefly, or just walking outside if that's available for you. For me, stress really shows up in my body. So I start to feel what I like to call kind of turbulent, like I have this energy and I don't really know what to do with it. So I try to build in movement into my day. And by that, I mean, I take a beat to notice when that turbulent energy is kind of creeping in and do some simple stretching at my desk in between meetings, right? So rolling out my neck, maybe noticing how far up my shoulders have gone throughout the day and trying to roll them out to get them to go down a little bit. So it does not have to be a full on workout, right? Just the little things to notice where you're at. And the last strategy that we have is for behaviors. So if you find yourself the avoider or the social media scroller, or the person that is running to the fridge and um, having that behavior like that, this one might be for you. So we know that habits can be easy to create and really difficult to break. And you might have heard the phrase neurons that fire together wire together. So essentially, every time you engage in a particular behavior over and over and over again, that neural pathway gets stronger and more efficient, which is really great if you're doing something useful or helpful to your life, but maybe not as adaptive if that strong neural pathway kind of has you picking up your phone and scrolling on social media every 2 minutes, myself included, very guilty of that. So if you find yourself scrolling, put your phone down and pause. Do something different with your hands. You can write a note to yourself, you can color a picture, you can play with a fidget toy, just something different with your hands to occupy your hands. And this gives your thinking brain some time to really come back online and gives it a fighting chance against that strong neural pathway that's been created. And over time, you'll build a new route for that neural pathway, and the choice you want to make will be a little bit more automatic. So you won't find yourself reaching for your phone every 2 minutes. So by effectively gauging which kind of your beliefs, your body, or behavior is showing up for you at that given time, you can pick a management strategy that's a good fit for you. So I'd like to know, using the chat, what do you already do in your daily life to help manage your stress? And I think that I learn a lot from you all, and I hope that you all can learn from each other. So, use this as a little crowdsource. So praying, walking outside if you can, journaling, taking a walk with your dog. Seeing a lot of walking. I love our California crew that is able to walk outside most of the year. It's so beneficial. Going outside, deep breaths, tensing and untensing your muscles, taking a walk with your coworkers, right? Getting that socialization aspect in there too. Going out at sunrise or sunset, long walks with your dog, reading and knitting, absolutely. And I'm also seeing a chat too of like, what happens when you know what to do, but you still don't do it, right? Like I said, those behaviors can be really hard to break. And, myself included, it is really hard. So, the more you practice at it and thinking about the little spurts that you can do to practice at it will help kind of reroute that neural pathway over time. So, it doesn't have to be, oh, I didn't get out for my walk today, and so therefore I'm failing at it, right? Like that's not the black and white catastrophic language that we need to be able to build a healthier habit. So focusing on like, what are the little things I can be doing, right? So I was able to kind of roll out my neck or do some stretching in between meetings. Or I took a lunch break, right? And I took a step away from my desk, which was a huge accomplishment today, right? So the little things that you can be doing. I'm seeing some essential oils, fantastic. That'll help kind of re-ground you, which is really important, especially in stressful situations where you feel like you're kind of out of body in a lot of way. Looking at nature or breathing in essential oils will help kind of re-ground you to the situation. So thank you so much. I hope that you all found maybe a strategy that might work for you and learn from others that put something in the chat. And if this is interesting to you, maybe you are a department lead or team lead or want to bring this back to your school or your district, we have a resource for this where you and your colleagues can create kind of a self-awareness plan where you identify how stress shows up for you personally and what is a strategy that you can take to kind of combat it. And when we're thinking about dependability of teams, and how that creates kind of that more positive culture of staff well-being, sharing with your colleagues on, I am in tune with how stress is showing up and I need support in uh, doing some of these strategies that will help me become a little bit less stressed throughout the day. And we have these resources in a follow-up link that will be shared after the webinar. So don't worry about kind of pulling any of the resources just yet. That will be shared a little bit later.